Hey, welcome back everyone to another edition of Quarantine Cooking with Zach. Today, we're gonna make buttermilk biscuits. All right, so this buttermilk biscuit recipe is pretty straightforward. Flour, buttermilk. If you don't have buttermilk, you just can add like a teaspoon or so of vinegar to some cold milk, and that'll is a good substitute. You're gonna need a stick of butter. It's 7 tablespoons for the biscuits, and then just a little left over for to brush the tops of them. That's it. We've got flour, baking powder, baking soda, and a little bit of salt. I'll drop the recipe I used in the comments. There's a bunch of recipes out there. They're all fairly similar. Let's get started. All right, so the first thing you want to do is you're going to want to slice up your butter into little small strips. This just helps when you cut it into the flour rather than throwing in an entire huge stick of butter. It sort of breaks it up and gets it to mix in much easier. All right, so I've cut out my butter. This is called a pastry blender, and it's used to cut the butter into your mixture. If you don't have one of these, you can actually use like a fork. A whisk sometimes can work. This is really just the preferred method because it cuts the butter into the flour and makes for a very nice buttermilk biscuit. So I just worked this for a minute or maybe 2 minutes or so, mixing it all up. All right, so I've cut all the butter in. It should look like, well, like crumbled butter and flour. You can see the flour isn't super smooth anymore. So those are just all the butter pieces cut in. You take your buttermilk, pour that in there. And then I just like to use my hand. I feel like I can control it a little bit better. Then you can use a spatula if you want. Again, I just prefer to use my hand. So I'll mix this up and then I will turn it out onto the counter and start rolling it out. Okay, so I've turned this out onto our countertop, lightly floured surface. What I like to do is I like to roll this into somewhat of a rectangle. And like I said earlier, there's different methods and different recipes. The ingredients are usually the same, but there's some varying rolling methods that people prefer to use. So I like to just roll it into a rectangle and then I fold it, so you're kind of creating these layers. I do this. I'll probably do this about 10 or so times. Add a little flour if it starts to stick, which it always will. So just repeat that until you feel comfortable. So there's a couple ways you can do this. You can use a cutter, like if you want to do a biscuit cutter or a cookie cutter or something, you can do that. I prefer to just cut them and you get square biscuits. So it saves a little bit of time and effort when you're not having to take the leftover pieces and roll it back together. Now, it just depends on your preference, what you like. This is all just your preference. So set them there, and I use butter. The recipes, some of them call for buttermilk. You can brush them with buttermilk. I prefer to do butter because who doesn't like butter? So I'm gonna throw these in the oven. It's a 425 on convection for about 15 minutes. About halfway through, I'm gonna pull them out and add the rest of that butter to the top. Okay, so these are ready for butter, jam, or honey, whatever you prefer. I think I'm gonna make some gravy and have biscuits and gravy this morning.
Funny.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today on Quarantine Cooking with Zach. I hope you enjoyed this episode. This is biscuits and gravy. I'm gonna go sit down and enjoy this. Have a great day and be good to each other.